We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Hey guys. Part 6 of this is what if Naruto woke up in a different Konoha. The day after a wild party to celebrate the end of the war against Madara, Naruto, the remaining Konoha 12, and some guests, can't help but wonder what happened last night as they wake up in a different Konoha. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 14, Ain done. The last privacy seal is complete and functional, Minato said, stepping back to admire his handiwork. Curling, almost invisible seals donned the walls of the academy hallway. Once active, they would stop any intrusion. When added to the Anbu hidden around the perimeter, it would be very difficult to spy on the meeting that was starting shortly, which was exactly what Minato had been aiming for since the possible future of Konoha depended on it. Now it was just a matter of waiting for the time travelers to arrive via the evacuation tunnels located under the building. They were going to be escorted by Kushina and the few Anbu assigned to them. It was a necessary precaution since such a large group moving through the village's streets would not remain unnoticed. Minato! An exuberant, familiar voice called out from the end of the hallway, proving his point. He sighed and braced for impact, knowing that when his soon-to-be wife was like that, resistance was futile. It wasn't his fiancée that slammed into him though, but a different, younger and bespectacled redhead wrapped in chakra chains. Were some of those chains coming from the girl as well? Minato, look who I found! Kushina yelled while still shoving the poor girl against him. Our baby girl. She doesn't exactly look like a baby, Kushina. Minato said, but inwardly he was frowning. So the girl was his daughter after all. The chains protruding from her body to the Uchiha boy were a dead giveaway of her parentage. Why hadn't Naruto said anything? Wait. Boy. Why was there a boy attached to his daughter? Mom, wait. Damn it, why isn't she listening? He heard Naruto yelling, and glancing back to the hallway he noticed that his son from the future had arrived as well. She is your mother, the boy that was touching his daughter said, like he was stating an obvious thing, all the while oblivious to Minato's ominous narrowing of eyes. Shut up, Sasuke. Not helping. Naruto muttered, casting an angry glare at him. Good boy. Defend your sister. Don't start that again, you two. There's no time for it, a new voice said, distracting Minato from his musings. It was Pink, Air, Sakura, the Kunoichi with way too much in common with Tsunade, leading the other time travelers, and an almost left-behind Anbu escort in tow. He didn't know how he hadn't noticed their arrival sooner, but the yondaime decided to blame his newly found overprotective paternal instincts. Look, his daughter tried to say, but Minato interrupted her by slightly raising his hand. Sorry, Karen, it's Karen, right? We don't have time to sort this out but we'll talk later, I promise, he said, before addressing the rest of the shinobi assembled in the hallway. Follow me, please. As he started to lead them down the hallway, Minato stole a glance over his shoulder and had to suppress a grin at seeing Kushina hounding Naruto and Karen with a seemingly endless flow of questions. Maybe it wasn't the way he had imagined it, even the kids seemed to be weirded out, but it was right there. His family. Then he noticed the Uchiha boy, and he almost frowned. At least he wasn't touching his daughter anymore. The only sounds in the field were the woman's whimpering and his companion's frantic pacing. What do we do now? Jiraiya asked, continuing his strides. We should go back to Konoha, like Minato asked, Orochimaru pointed out simply while bandaging his wounded hand. The stinging pain and the dull sensation from the appendage reminded him to resume that experiment regarding hypercellular regeneration as soon as possible. I meant about her, the toad sage said, pointing at the prone form of Tsunade Senju, still covered by Orochimaru's blood. I'm thinking, Orochimaru replied, although he was more worried about other things. Like how to find the suitable sacrifice that Manda was asking for without having to explain it to the Namikaze brat. He may have to ask Danzo for a favor. The old fool always had people he needed to disappear. Satisfied by his decision, he turned towards Jiraiya. We should go back to Konoha as Minato asked, and leave her here. Jiraiya stopped in his tracks and looked at him in silence, crossing his arms in obvious disapproval. Do you really want to be around when she snaps out of it? Orochimaru asked, gesturing with his good hand to the shaking blonde. Do you really want to leave her like this? Here, in the middle of nowhere. I'm not the one hopelessly in love with her. True. But you are the one that reduced her to this state, Jiraiya pointed out smugly. Are you sure she won't feel a little bit vindictive once she comes back to her senses? We're going back to Konoha and we're taking Tsunade with us, Orochimaru said immediately. We can leave the task of explaining everything to her to Namikaze. Cruel, Orochimaru, the toad sage smirked, not envying the blonde. You're cruel. Shut up and go search for her apprentice, he hissed. Right. If we show Tsunade that Shizune is fine, she might not even try to maim us. The room was silent, even if it was filled with two groups of people that were clearly eyeing each other as if over some invisible line, no matter how much they tried to be inconspicuous about it. Minato had not dared to say a word yet, sensing the curiosity mixed with palpable anxiety of those present, like they were in a room full of strangers. Which was exactly what it was, technically, but for his plan to work he would need everyone's. Look, honey, Kizashi Haruno whispered to his wife, though it was clearly audible in a silent room full of ninja. She got her hair from my side of the family. True, the woman nodded sagely, scrutinizing her future daughter with a critical eye. She got my family's forehead, though. Mum. Pink, Sakura moaned, before realization shone through her eyes. Wait, you already know. Before the two Chunin could answer, Minato cleared his throat, gaining everyone's attention and saving the poor girl from further embarrassment by her parents. We all know why we're here, so let's. We don't, actually, Naruto interrupted him. You don't? He asked, confused. That Anbu you sent just said that you wanted to see us. We're obviously here to talk about what to do next, Sakura said with a rather impressive deadpan, like she was used to deal with his son's antics. Or at least Minato supposed so, since he had no idea what those antics could be. He suspected they were reminiscent of Kushina's. Oh. Right, that makes sense. Idiot, the Uchiha that kept standing beside his daughter said, which earned him a full-on glare from his son. Very well, Minato started again. As you all know, a building appeared inside the village walls 3 days ago. After the events that transpired next, and the first attempts to interrogate the people found inside, we came to the incredible. We know there are sons and daughters from the future. Some exclaimed all of a sudden. Just get to the point. Fine, I'll be brief, the fourth Hokage said, after a mildly affronted cough. We have a delicate situation on our hands. The whole village is aware of our unexpected guests. Since their arrival caused quite a bit of collateral damage. To my apartment, mostly, Naruto said. And there were more than a few wounded, especially among the Uchiha military police. More than a few? Fugaku asked, glaring at Sasuke as if he wished to see his own son struck by lightning. More than half of our able-bodied clansmen are still in the hospital. And it's his fault. Sasuke just stared back blankly without replying. Yes, as I was saying. Since their arrival was so blatantly showy, we can't exactly have them out and about the village without an explanation. You want to let them roam through the village freely? Fugaku asked, appalled. Unless you want to lock your own son in a cell until we figure out how to send them back, yes, Minato said, trying to be reasonable even if he was getting tired of being interrupted continuously. Considering how dangerous it could be if our enemies found out that time travel is possible, yes. I would gladly lock my son in a cell to avoid that. You seem to be under the mistaken impression that I would go quietly, Sasuke started, only to stop as he felt Naruto's hand on his shoulder. The two shared a glance before the Uchiha reluctantly stepped down. This pleased the Yondaime, since it meant his son was capable of keeping the Uchiha youngster in line. He was too aggressive for his tastes. Anyway, Minato said, raising his voice to show how tired he was of being interrupted, as I was trying to say, we need a cover story to ensure that your origin remains secret and nobody finds out about the giant seal that can render time travel possible. Especially anyone who would abuse it, since we're still uncertain of the potential danger of time paradoxes, Shikaku added. Minato nodded, shuddering inwardly at the idea of what Iwa or Kuma would do with a seal capable of moving people through time. Or worse, Danzo. That said, I'm open to suggestions. Oh. I know. Naruto exclaimed, raising his hand. We could say that I'm your long-lost younger brother or something like that. It would be more credible if only you needed a cover story, Minato sighed. Surely, had Naruto come alone, things would have been simpler. That's the best part, I heard about you, and I wanted to impress you. So I gathered a few shinobi before coming here. He's talking about us like we're collectibles, the Inuzuka teen whispered, still loud enough to be heard though. Worse, collectibles that he would hand over to his brother, the Yamanaka girl. Minato was pretty sure her name started with Ino, groaned. Unfortunately among those shinobi there are some that either have a bloodline or secret family technique well associated with Konoha's most famous clans, Minato reasoned. I really wanted to impress you. His son asked in an uncertain tone, visibly deflating. Sorry, Naruto, it can't work. There are just too many of you. If it helps, I think you would be able to pull off being Minato's brother with little effort, Kushina assured the younger blonde who nodded approvingly. Of course they would both think that. Come to think of it, a lot of Naruto's behavior reminded him of Kushina. He wasn't sure if that was a good or bad thing. We could claim that they were sent on a long-term mission and it set off a false alarm when they showed up without warning, Inoko, the stand-in for Inoichi proposed. That would sound reasonable, Minato pondered, but which village would ever send 19 shinobi? And a dog, the two Inuzuka added at the same time. And a dog on a single mission? Maybe there were multiple missions going on at once. Ken Hagane, the only civilian in the room asked, only to realize that everyone was looking at him like he'd grown a second head. Coincidences don't exist in our profession, Minato explained. Such an event would still raise too many questions. Oh, the man colored with embarrassment. Never mind then. Any other ideas? The blissful silence Orochimaru had been enjoying was interrupted as Tsunade's body twitched and spasmed for just a second before going still. Unlike the previous times, though, the last Senju had turned to face the pale shinobi and may have moved in his general direction by an inch. Without hesitating, he produced a small syringe from his pouch and immediately injected its contents into the woman's arm after accurately finding the vein so that it would spread faster. He then considered what he knew about Tsunade's abilities. While he was not aware of all the details on how her techniques worked, since any ninja would guard such things jealously, he couldn't exclude the chance that she had some resistance to various substances that could be used against her. So Orochimaru took another syringe from his pouch, identical to the first, and used it as well, just in case. That should keep you calm for a while, he said, as the liquid entered the woman's bloodstream. There was the slight chance of overdose, but again, it was Tsunade. Now, where did that big oaf go? You should be more worried about delivering the sacrifices you owe me, Orochimaru, the giant snake behind him said. Break. Another dimension? Minato asked in a bewildered tone. Shikaku, have you gone mad? I'm just saying that if we can't find a good excuse, we could just make up a story, the Nara simply said, with his usual bored expression. And if you have to hide something like this situation, you lie big. But, still, who would believe that? I'm pretty sure that if a seal master, like say, Uzumaki-san or yourself, said that the seal functioned that way, everyone would trust your opinion. Let's put it into the maybe list, shall we? He asked nervously, making a mental note to put the suggestion at the very bottom of said list. I got it. The boy that could have passed for Guy's son, brother, or clone exclaimed. We could. No, the bun-haired Kunoichi cut him short. But Ten. No, she repeated, with a slightly stricter tone. What if they used the Henge no Jutsu to assume a fake identity fabricated by our intelligence division? Hayashi asked, speaking for the first time. That would be a good way to conceal the truth, yes, Minato mused. The idea had potential, although, the Guy clone, he really wanted to ask for another DNA test, just to be sure, started, embarrassment clear on his face. I can't do Henge very well. The adult's attention immediately shifted towards the green-clad youngster. The idea of a ninja that couldn't use one of the basic 3 jutsus was completely absurd. And yet, Minato noticed, none of the time travelers seemed to be surprised by this. But that's fine, the boy continued, his mortification immediately forgotten and replaced by a look of determination, because with the power of youth. Was that all? Kushina interrupted with a wave of her hand, which Minato and others were clearly grateful for. Don't worry about it, kid. We can just slap a minor seal on you and you'll be good to go. Really? The young man asked, flabbergasted. Yeah, really, the redhead said proudly. Seal master here. I'm afraid though it would be too risky, Minato said, interrupting someone for once, since this would involve bringing even more people into our little conspiracy. And you don't think there are too many people involved now? Shikaku asked, glancing around the room full of people. If I wanted to involve less people than this, I would have locked them in a cell, he stated. Again. At least you admit that it would be a good idea, Fugaku muttered bitterly. If that was the case, we would attempt to escape, the sand user, Gaara, Minato reminded himself, said in a monotone voice. Again. Now, that's just not constructive, Minato sighed. Things weren't looking good, but it wasn't exactly simple finding a cover story for almost 19 people. And a dog. Not one that would resist the scrutiny of the village and the other shinobi outside of it. I think I have another idea, Naruto murmured with a pensive look. Please, spare us, Sasuke said, glancing at the younger blonde. No, seriously. This one will work. Let's hear it then. Watching the clouds, Orochimaru decided, was not as interesting as dissecting something, especially if the specimen was intriguing. Sadly there was not much else to do on the deserted battlefield, besides keep watch on Tsunade's sleeping form and wait for Jiraiya's return. At least he had managed to send Manda away, with the promise of finding a suitable sacrifice for the service given as soon as possible. Otherwise he'd have never heard the end of it. A rustling from the distant foliage caught his attention. Jiraiya had finally returned, but he was apparently carrying a massive tree branch slung over one shoulder. A closer examination revealed that on the tip of the oversized stick, Tsunade's teen apprentice was grasping the wood for her dear life, in a way that reminded Orochimaru of his teacher's summons. He gave his teammate a pointed look, silently asking for an explanation. I found her like this, a few miles in that direction, the toad sage simply said, pointing in the direction he had come from. Right at the very top of a tree. I tried to pry her away but... Orochimaru's eyes shifted towards the young girl, who didn't seem to react at all to their or Tsunade's presence. She was thrown by Tsunadeheim for miles, Jiraiya answered to the unasked question. I'm sure that anyone would be a bit out of it. Orochimaru resisted the urge to roll his eyes. Barely. Still, better than leaving her in the middle of this, Jiraiya grinned, gesturing towards the destroyed landscape. She's safe anyway, and more importantly, it's not something Tsunade can blame us for. The snake summoner found himself begrudgingly agreeing to that. So, who do you want to carry to Konoha? Jiraiya asked with a pervy grin. Because I would gladly carry Tsunadeheim. Orochimaru didn't even try to resist the eye roll this time. Naruto had just finished talking, and the sudden silence was almost deafening, and it felt even worse since everyone was staring at him agape. Is it a dumb plan? He asked sheepishly. I mean, no, Minato interrupted him. No, I think it's actually a good plan considering the circumstances. It surely has potential, Shikaku added. If we can make it work, of course. We better start the preparations then, if everyone is in agreement. The Hokage asked, and there's several nods of consent at that. Whoa, wait, what about us? We don't want to be sissy leaf neen. The young man with the war paint proclaimed, earning more than a few nasty glares. No offense. He's an idiot, but he's right, the blonde woman beside him said, rolling her eyes. I'd rather not be a leaf if it can be avoided. Right, Gaara? The redhead nodded slightly. It would not be good for the Kazekage to be representing another village. Silence fell once again upon the room, this time out of shock as Minato suppressed a groan. He had hoped to keep the identity of the future Kazekage a secret, but apparently the redhead had just thrown another wrench in his plans. Again, what the hell is going on in the future? Some asked, voicing everyone's thoughts. I'm afraid we can't tell you details about future events, was the quick answer from Shikaku's son. No, I meant, why were they here? The older Inuzuka asked again. We were attending Naruto's party, Gaara replied without missing a beat. The Kazekage was attending my son's party? Kushina exclaimed, looking between him and Naruto for an explanation. Well, we're friends, Naruto said before said Kazekage could reply. Nothing weird there. Subtle, Minato realized, his son was not. It was clear that Naruto was hiding something by the holes in what little of his life he had shared with them, and how he hadn't said anything about his sister, and now it was clear that he didn't want to reveal something. Maybe he wanted to protect his friend. The Hokage inwardly sighed, knowing that it would be unwise to investigate further, since the risk of causing a time paradox was pretty serious. This didn't stop his mind from wondering about what could have happened to the future. So, what could their cover story be? He asked, changing the subject. We could be ambassadors, I suppose. Gaara guessed. It's not like Suna is here to claim otherwise. So wait, my cover is my actual job? The blonde Suna Kunoichi asked, cocking an eyebrow. Should be easy to keep the act then, the one with the war paint snarked. Does anyone have any objections to this? Or the overall plan? Minato asked, scanning the room with his gaze. Nobody said anything. Then it's decided then. I would suggest we take the necessary measures immediately. There were murmurs and nods of agreement, but Minato wasn't really listening. He was too focused on how for the first time, since the beginning of this absurd situation, things were starting to sort themselves out. Canary felt the need to scratch his itchy elbow, but immediately fought the urge. He had been given a very important task and he would not risk messing it up. Admittedly, while the task itself was important, it was also incredibly simple. Since over the last few days he'd had the rottenest of luck in practically all of Anbu history, he had been volunteered for this job since he would literally have to do nothing but stand still. He glanced to the giant, spiraling seal in the center of the room, just to be sure that it was still in the same place, and then immediately went back to focusing on guarding the entrance to the room. That's what he had to do, simply check to make sure that nobody besides the Hokage, Jiraiya the Toad Sage, who was out of the village anyway, and that Uzumaki woman entered the area. Apparently the seal was very important, but also unstable, and they had to prevent it from being tampered with at all costs. The use of force against any intruder was authorized and encouraged, which was fine with him since the rest of his unit, as well as a few other squads were keeping an eye on the building's key entrances and patrolling the hallways. The chances of an intruder making it undetected all the way to the room he was currently standing in were very, very slim, which meant that there was no way for Canary to screw up on the job again. The idea of doing a good job and regaining some of his standing was enough to almost make him giggle. Almost. Anbu didn't giggle. It also helped that his thoughts were interrupted by a sound. He quickly looked around the room, a kunai in his hand, searching for the source of the noise that was slowly becoming louder and had started to resemble a hum. There was no one though, only him. He tried to dispel a possible genjutsu, but nothing happened. He tried again, to no avail. It was clear that no genjutsu had been placed on him, but if nobody was producing the humming, the only other possible thing would be the seal. That was now brightening, the symbols and lines inside it moving at a faster pace. In the precise instant before a white light blinded him, Canary realized that someone, somewhere, really hated him. Chapter 15. Here we are, Minato said, a barely noticeable flash of yellow light later. Wait, this is your place? Naruto asked as he looked over the small apartment, taken aback. It wasn't very different from his old one, small, Spartan and everything, from the clothes on the couch to the scrolls hazardly left around just screamed, bachelor. It was much cleaner than his house had ever been though. Well, yes. Why don't you, oh, right. You've never seen it, have you? Minato said. I suppose it is too small for a family with 2 kids. Yeah. Naruto agreed, trailing off with a nervous laugh. I suppose so. I still don't get why we couldn't go to my place, Kushina grumbled, pouting a little. Your place is messy, remember? Minato said, a strange look on his face. And I don't get why I'm here, Karen deadpanned. See? She agrees with me. Kushina nodded proudly, full of misaimed motherly approval, completely ignoring Minato. We should have gone to my place. No, that's not what I meant. Karen snapped. I wanted to go with Sasuke. Come on, sis. This is important, Naruto interrupted her, trying to hide the pleading tone from his parents while hoping that she would catch on. You'll be able to see your boyfriend later. Right? Fine, she finally answered, but not without giving Naruto a death glare. At least she had agreed to help him in this mess. Well, since we're here already, might as well. Kushina sighed, drooping for a moment before immediately rising with a bright, excited grin. Family meeting. We've already met, Karen deadpanned, her glare towards Naruto all but burning in its intensity. The blonde was too worried about the pensive expression that his father had as he studied the silent exchange between the 2 siblings, to care, though. No, dear, not that kind of meeting. Kushina exclaimed, grabbing Karen's hand and leading her to the table beside the apartment's small kitchenette. A family meeting, where we talk and gossip and, Kushina, we didn't come here to gossip, Minato interjected, as he started rummaging through the kitchen, looking for something. Oh, hush, Minato. Kushina playfully ordered as she sat at the table, taking the younger Uzumaki along with her. My little girl is dating my best friend's son, or is it my son's best friend? I want to gossip. But our cover story, Naruto tried to protest, only to be silenced by a playful gesture from his mother. It's not like we can't do it later, Kushina. Minato pleaded, exasperation creeping into his tone even as he poured water into a kettle. We can't talk about the future, Mom, Naruto said with a wince. Remember? Ah. Well, there's got to be something that we can talk about. Like, when are your birthdays? Which one of you is older? Kushina, Minato repeated again, but once again he was ignored by his future wife. I'm the older one, Karen told them all of a sudden, throwing a smug glance at Naruto, who could only look at her with a mix of shock and betrayal as she had just stolen his rightful spot as firstborn. Kushina flashed a triumphant grin at Minato before excitedly turning back to Karen. When were you born? No. Father and son yelled at the same time, which caused the both of them to look at each other before Naruto kept going. No. Sorry Mom, but, if we told you, things might change. You know. What are you? Oh, Kushina paused, her eyes widening as she realized what he meant. Oh, yeah, we don't want to mess up the circumstances of our, birth, Naruto said, deeply embarrassed by having to talk about it with his parents. Future parents. Whatever. The knucklehead is right, Karen nodded. Besides. I'm not your daughter, Karen. Naruto exclaimed, while his parents seemed to only be able to stare in shock. What? What are you saying? Of course you are. Kushina laughed awkwardly before realizing that no one else was joining in. Naruto slumped in his chair in defeat. Is this why you told me you were our only son before? His father asked, getting closer to him, and the time traveler almost winced as he felt him press a sympathetic hand on his shoulder. There went their excuse. He really hoped that if he suddenly ceased to exist because they found out thanks to Karen's big mouth, it wouldn't hurt too much. Did something happen? Kushina asked, almost fearfully, looking back and forth the two younger Uzumaki sitting in front of her. Are we an estranged family? What? No. Kane groaned, running a hand through her hair. I'm telling you, I'm not your daughter. Naruto and I are cousins, at best. Cousins. Kushina repeated slowly, eyes as wide as saucers. But, we're not, sure. Because we couldn't find any records, Naruto quickly explained, deciding to do some damage control before he was accidentally erased from existence. But, yeah, we're cousins. He means is that we decided to be cousins, Karen said, rolling her eyes. It's quite possible, we're just not sure how closely related we are. But that means. Kushina trailed off, and Naruto could feel the unasked question hanging in the air. My mother was another Uzumaki. Where is she? Kushina asked, halfway out of her chair before she'd finished speaking, only to stop as she seemed to realize one little detail. Wait, will be. She died, Karen said slowly, averting her eyes. Karen, what happened to don't talk about the future? Naruto couldn't help but ask, because he was very aware that knowing this, his mother would try to change the events. Had he been the one being told of future events, he would have done the same. Hey, just because you don't want to upset your parents doesn't mean I'm willing to act like your sister, she snapped back, adjusting her glasses. Don't worry, Kushina calmly declared, getting up and looking ready for a fight. We'll go find your mother Anne. There, see? Naruto pointed at his mother's reaction, sending a meaningful look at Karen. No, you can't, Karen interrupted in a sad tone. Not until we're sure that changing things won't have bad side effects. But. Kushina looked to Minato and Naruto for support, but wilted when she saw clenched jaws and solemn eyes. Alright, but if we find out that we can change things, you'll take me to save your mom's ass, Databane. Naruto found himself silently agreeing. He would gladly change things if he could, and he knew that his fellow time travelers were interested in the idea, but he had no idea how to find out if it was safe without causing a paradox. Maybe Shikamaru or his father could think up something. Really? Karen asked, interrupting the brief silence that had fallen over the table. Sure. Promise of a lifetime. Kushina Glady exclaimed with a grin. Naruto couldn't help but snort loudly at that, trying to suppress the laugh that wanted to escape from his lips. What's so funny? His mother asked with a frown. Nothing. Nothing, Mom, it's just. I remembered something, that's all, he explained, smirking at her confused expression. Thank you, but, what if we can't change anything? Karen asked, addressing the bijou in the room. Depends, Kushina mumbled, tipping her chin thoughtfully. When did you arrive in Konoha? Kushina. I'm not asking for details, Minato. I'm just asking how long until she gets here. Well, the first time I arrived in Konoha, I was 12, Karen paused, hesitating. Naruto looked at his maybe cousin with a puzzled expression. When had that happened? Then. Orochimaru found me. Orochimaru found you? Kushina exclaimed incredulous. I'll have to thank him somehow. Maybe with a nice meal. Karen's expression didn't change at that, trying to not betray anything about how the meeting had actually gone. Naruto was too busy screaming internally to notice, though. Somehow, imagining a context that required the words, Orochimaru, Mom, and, thanking him with a meal, together sounded very wrong. Why don't we just adopt? Kushina asked all of a sudden, ignorant of the scarring image she had brought to the younger Uzumaki's mind. What? Three voices asked at the same time, dumbfounded. Well, I was thinking that if we can change things, we can take your mom here to Konoha. But otherwise, Kushina paused, turning towards Minato. Let's adopt her. Kushina, we're not even married yet. Minato protested. Oh please, as if that's not gonna happen. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Hey. Karen started, quickly getting over the initial shock. Don't I get a say in? That's a great idea. Naruto yelled happily, grinning at his maybe cousin, maybe adopted sister. He really liked the idea, but he wouldn't have been honest if he didn't admit that a part of him wanted to get back at Karen for having spilled the beans. Or at least part of said beans. I'm still older than you, you know, she said matter-of-factly, glaring at him. Naruto quickly realized, much to his horror, that he may have just forfeited his spot as firstborn by his own volition. While he was busy trying to remember that revenge really didn't pay off in the end, the kettle decided to whistle from its spot on the fire. We could have already irreparably changed the course of events, Shikamaru said from his spot on the grassy field. Could be, his father replied, without even turning towards him. After all, the clouds were way too interesting. And they helped somehow ignore the possible impending doom, at least for a little while. So, he started, deciding that it was time to tackle the bothersome subject. What do you figure would be the best cover story for me? Just a painfully shy Nara, Shikaku answered without hesitation. Shy? Really? The younger shadow user quizzed, stealing a glance at his father's prone form. What's wrong with being shy? The older Nara asked, arching an eyebrow in amusement. I would have gone with mute. Less chances of people trying to question me, Shikamaru explained. That would have meant not being able to talk to your girlfriend in public, his father observed with a sly smile. Shy it is then, he quickly rectified. Temari wouldn't have taken it well if he stopped talking to her, cover story or not. Do you believe that the others will be able to find good alibis? Perhaps. But people will eventually piece together the fact that not everything adds up. Great, Shikamaru groaned, looking back at the clouds hoping to find their sight soothing. Why do I have the feeling that you and I are in charge of trying to plug the holes in our sinking ship? Unfortunately, his father nodded sagely. What a drag. Inoichi. A voice called to him, which made him groggily open his eyes. And being promptly blinded by the sudden light. Inoichi, can you hear me? Are you feeling all right? Inoko. He called, recognizing the voice. When he opened his eyes again, he was met by the face of his sister, kneeling beside the bed he was laying on. Welcome back, brother, she greeted him, with a small and yet warm smile. Do you remember what happened? Inoichi blinked, trying to recall for what reason he may have been sent to the hospital. The massive headache and vertigo weren't helping though. How long? he asked, with a sore voice. Just a day or so, she said. We were worried that a mind walk into your mind could put you in danger, but, I'm lucky to have a sister like you watching my back. Then, Inoichi smirked, or at least tried to. Actually, it wasn't me, Inoko admitted. What? Then who? Hey, Dad, called another voice by the other side of his bed. Huh? He eloquently voiced his confusion as he turned. His mind may have been a bit foggy, but he immediately recognized the young blonde. The one that knew his clan's secret techniques. Ino, please. Inoko sighed before he could ask any questions. I didn't say anything. Ino replied with a frown. What is she doing here? He asked, idly wondering why there were no guards in the room as well. Helping your sorry ass, the girl scoffed with not exactly subtle hostility. No, not that, wait, you saved me? Inoichi asked, actually taken back. She's supposed to be a prisoner. He said, looking at his sister in utter bafflement. You've been left a bit out of the loop, brother. You see, my friends and I are from the future, the girl interrupted. I'm your daughter. You're from the future, he repeated, trying to make sense of what he was being told, even in his dazed state. That's the stupidest thing I've ever. Auntie, the Ino girl said, ignoring him. Since he's awake, maybe we should call a doctor. I'll leave you two alone, then, Inoko nodded, walking towards the door. And Ino? Don't be too hard on him. Even if he does deserve it. And with that, the two were left alone before Inoichi could protest about being left alone with a potentially hostile shinobi that had just taken a look inside his head, who just opted to frown at him from her seat, arms crossed. Awkward didn't even start to describe it. Let's make this quick before she comes back. Yes, I'm from the future. Yes, I'm your daughter, and before you ask, this whole mess was an accident and we all hope to fix it. And yes, the Hokage believes us. I wouldn't be here if he didn't, she quickly told him, causing Inoichi to arch an eyebrow. Even Minato believed that. He still wasn't buying it. There was clearly something else going on here. And I will never forgive you for what you tried to do to me, the girl finished, genuinely fuming. What I tried to do to you? He briefly rifled through what he remembered before stopping with an indignant frown. I just complimented you for your looks. Inoichi found himself mildly offended and the girl actually gagged and was genuine in her reaction. Most girls just pretended to try to ward him off. He continued, doing his best to ignore her insulting reaction. And how on earth did you make Minato believe that absurd lie? You want me to tell you what your favorite flowers are, or something else only you would know? Ino asked, sarcastically. You could have found that inside my head. Although, if you're from the future, why don't you tell me who your mother is? Inoichi asked, snarking himself. What? Why? You probably already know her. Shouldn't you know who you're going to marry by now? Actually, I'm enjoying my bachelor lifestyle, thank you very much. And that is why I have no idea how Mom ever fell for you, the girl sighed. What? It's in your best interest to hook us up. If we don't, you'll never be born. Oh, so you believe me now? Honestly, I'm more interested in sparing Mom the disappointment. Ouch, Inoichi complained with a wince. He couldn't quite manage to keep the slight edge of respect out of his voice. Either she'd picked through his mind while he was unconscious, or she had way more experience dealing with him than he had dealing with her. You know, for being someone that pretending to be my future daughter, you're not showing a lot of respect. After all, I'm supposed to be your father. You are not my father. You're his bratty, younger, playboy version. And I suppose that all your fellow time travelers are all kids of people from the village, right? He asked, trying to find a hole in her story. A bigger one than the whole time travel nonsense, at least. Not all of them, of course. Ino scoffed. There's Sakura, Hinata, Chuji, Kiba, Naruto. Oh right, the boy that looks a bit like Minato, the boy. Inoichi all but yelled, as his foggy memory connected the dots about what had transpired before he lost consciousness. He has the. So you do remember what happened to you, she interrupted him. I believe that I have a good idea of what you stumbled upon, when you were interrogating Naruto. I have to tell the Hokage. He continued frantically, struggling to get up. Minato needs to. No, Ino said, making Inoichi turn towards her. Minato Namikaze, or anyone else, must not know of this. You don't understand, the beast is free. Unchained, without restraints. The boy, look, the girl tried to explain him in a soothing tone. Believe me when I say to you that for some crazy reason, against all logic, Naruto is perfectly safe to be around. He's a jinch. Also, that's classified, Ino finished, her voice becoming stern and strict all of a sudden. Wah, we're in the past. We can't. Ino stopped for a moment, taking a calming breath. Listen, just like you, I have a very, very, very smart friend. He and his father, your own incredibly smart friend, figured out a few possible outcomes if things changed because of our meddling. We're not sure yet if their theories are just speculation, or fact. But? Inoichi asked, curious to see where this was going. There had to be a but. But, a large number of said theories deal with something called paradox. It's what happens when you change things by meddling, maybe in a way that would make the change contradict what caused said change. Ugh, I sound like Shikamaru now. Is he a Nara, by any chance? He couldn't help but ask. Not the point. Ino told him with a glare. The point is, we have no idea what would happen if a paradox occurred. I don't want to sound paranoid, but among the possible scenarios our very, very smart friends told us about was included the destruction of reality itself. But, and that's the end of the world, Dad. Yes. Just think how upset Mom would be with you if you caused all that to happen. She won't be, Ino continued before he had the chance to reply, because we'll all be dead. And that is terrible, Inoichi reasoned, if reason could be applied to that explanation. But, how did he become a jink? That's S-rank on a need-to-know basis. Way above even your current clearance. And don't use that word. They don't like it. Inoichi paused. Not because he had accepted the crazy explanation, but because it seemed a bit absurd that people took the effort to not offend a Jinchuriki. Although, the more he thought about it, it kinda made sense. You didn't want to treat the guy with an incredibly powerful and malicious entity trapped inside him badly. That was just asking for trouble. You know that I was exploring his mind with 4 of our clansmen, right? He asked, trying to change the topic. Which led to a long, stunned silence from the girl. Naruto's gonna owe me big time for this. Ino finally grumbled, with a stressed expression. Sasuke silently sat on the other side of the desk, not at all perturbed by the fact that his father was giving him a death glare. Or at least it looked like a death glare. He wasn't sure if that was the case since the room was mostly in the dark, with only a bright lamp pointed at him shedding light. You are courting an Uzumaki? Fugaku asked, finally breaking the silence. Yes, Sasuke replied, hiding his surprise. Of all the things his father could have said to start their conversation, that hadn't really come to his mind. Are the Uchiha not good enough for you? His father asked immediately. That is none of your concern. I'm the head of the clan, Fugaku stated. All Uchiha are my concern. All except me. Fugaku frowns. Did Mikoto and I truly raise you to be so rebellious? Sasuke didn't answer, although he did ponder on the question. Had he been a rebellious teen? Sure, there had been his brief stint as a villain, but he had had his reasons to do that. Not exactly what he would define as rebellious. Very well, then. Let's get straight to the point. Fugaku sighed, before looking him straight in the eyes. You have the Manjikyu. Yes, Sasuke replied, matter-of-factly. How? None of your concern, he repeated. It would be in your own best interest, tell me, boy. I thought we were here to talk about my cover story until we were able to proceed with Naruto's plan, Sasuke said. As weird as that may sound, that can wait. We both know what having the Manjikyu means, and I will not tolerate such a. Trust me, father, he said, smirking darkly. You don't truly know what it means. Enough with these games. Fugaku exclaimed as he stood up, leaning over the desk that separated them. Who did you kill? Are you sure you want to know? Sasuke asked, arching an eyebrow. I don't care if you're my time-traveling son, you're an unknown risk. The fact that you have those eyes makes you a danger to the clan. If I was, you wouldn't be able to stop me even if you wanted to, Sasuke said. It wasn't an arrogant boast, both Uchiha knew that it was true. Do I have your word that you will not harm anyone in our clan? Fugaku asked in a grave tone. If they confront me, I won't hold back, was Sasuke's short rebuttal. That's not what I asked you. Fugaku thundered, hands slamming on the wooden surface. It's all you're going to get, he pointed out. After all, he might have to defend himself if things went south with Naruto's plan. I suggest you take it. All I ask is that you don't touch my family, Fugaku said, in a somehow calmer tone. Abide by that condition and there shall be no problems between us. They're my family too, Sasuke pointed out. Not yet they aren't, his father argued. You're not born yet. Sasuke's expression didn't change, but he couldn't stop himself from feeling disappointed. So what if he wasn't born yet? He was still an Uchiha. No, scratch that, back in the future, or present, it was just a matter of perspective, he was the Uchiha. Not being considered one just because he had the misfortune of arriving a bit before his birthdate seemed unfair. How old is Itachi now? He asked, trying to fill the silence between him and his parent. He just turned 2 years old, Fugaku answered, looking a bit taken back by the change of topic. Hn. Why do you ask? I'm just trying to figure out how far back we went, Sasuke replied, crossing his arms. Yet another pause fell between the two shinobi. How long until you're born? Fugaku asked, deciding to breaking the silence himself this time. I can't tell you that, he replied with a scoff. Right, his father snorted. The delicate time stream, the seams of reality or whatever, which your Uzumaki friend put at risk so casually. Please. Don't even get me started on that idiot. Sasuke groaned, slapping a hand on his forehead. Oh, the things he could tell about Naruto's antics. I take it this is a recurring problem, Fugaku grumbled. There is far too much for me to complain about, father, none of which I can tell you. I see. I can't say that I approve of your associating with him, Fugaku observed, stroking his chin in a thoughtful manner. I doubt there's any way you, or even I, have a say in the matter, Sasuke admitted. Truth to be told, he had surrendered to the fact that Naruto was his friend long ago. Besides, I thought the clan's rivalry was with the Senju and the Hyuga. The Uzumaki have blood ties to the Senju. Senju, Uzumaki, it makes no difference. They're all the same to us, his father explained, with the same prideful tone that Sasuke remembered he used when talking about the clan. Besides, no Hyuga would throw himself back in time by getting drunk. So, the problem now is that I got drunk? He asked, arching an eyebrow. The problem is you allowed that Uzumaki boy to get you involved in this mess, was the grumbled reply. And that I have the Manjikyu, Sasuke observed. This doesn't have anything to do with you having the Manjikyu. I doubt you would antagonize me so much otherwise, he scoffed, resisting the urge to roll his eyes. Uchiha didn't roll their eyes. Naruto doesn't ask for permission. People get involved with him whether they want to or not. What do you mean? Fugaku slowly asked, becoming strangely concerned. Does he use his status as the Hokage's son to get his way? Does he blackmail you? Sadly, before Sasuke could even start explaining how ridiculous the idea of Naruto, of all people abusing his position for something was, the lights in his father's private study turned on. His mother was standing by the door, her finger still on the light switch. Who's getting blackmailed? And why are you standing here in the dark? Mikoto asked, before scowling menacingly at her husband. Are you interrogating our son? I am thinking of the good of the clan, he tried to explain. I have to. He doesn't approve of my friendship with Naruto, Sasuke stated, trying to keep the emotions off of his face. He mostly succeeded. From the outside his face rivaled a statue in its stillness and control. On the inside, though, he was in turmoil. He hadn't seen his mother for most of his life, seeing her alive and well at that ridiculous meeting had been bad enough. But now, here in the private of his old home, now made it hard to swallow, hard to breathe. He desperately tried to crush his weakness, but found he couldn't. Not entirely. A part of him just wanted to jump from the chair he was sitting and hug her for all the years lost after the tragedy that had struck her down. What? But why? She asked, looking between the two of them. Kushina and I have dreamed about such a thing since we were teens. You did? Sasuke couldn't help but ask. Yes, she nodded. Didn't we tell you about it when you were growing up? No. You didn't, he replied, trying to mask his surprise. His mother and Naruto's friends? Since when? But that doesn't make sense. Kushina would have surely teased you too about it. Mikoto reasoned. Sasuke didn't remember being teased about anything, but it raised an interesting question. Would she have had told him, had she lived longer? Would she have told Naruto about her son is the reason why our son got drunk and showed up from the future? Fugaku barked, trying to get his wife's support. We showed up because he was the one that made the seal while drunk. That has nothing to do with me, Sasuke corrected. The end result was the same, yes, but he had not been involved in causing the mess. I don't think encouraging a friendship between our sons is in anyone's best interest, Fugaku continued, ignoring Sasuke's correction. Don't be ridiculous, Mikoto scolded him. Don't be ridiculous. The older Uchiha repeated, incredulous. Minato's spawn may have endangered the fabric of reality itself. And trying to hinder the boy's friendship would mess with it even more, she reasoned, crossing her arms. Or did you forget what they said about changing things? I don't want to mess with causality. I just want what's the best for our family. So our son got drunk. It can happen. Mikoto rebutted, albeit her tone wasn't exactly something you could call approving. It happened to you, at Shikaku Nara's bachelor party. I told you, it was Hayashi and Hisashi's fault. Fugaku defended himself, interrupting her. They spiked the punch, I swear. But you didn't see me trying to cause a time paradox because of it. She continued, unperturbed by her husband's excuses. HN. Didn't we have to talk about my cover story? Sasuke asked, suddenly more than a little uncomfortable. Sasuke, don't interrupt your parents when they're talking, Fugaku told him sternly. We will have words about this drinking attitude of yours later, young man. Mikoto said, pointing an accusing finger at him. Sasuke opened his mouth to answer that, to try to defend himself by saying that it wasn't an attitude or a habit, that he had just attended to a party and things had escalated out of control, but for some reason he couldn't produce a sound. It took him a couple of seconds to realize that he was being scolded. He didn't even remember the last time it had happened. Or that he may have missed it. Mother? Father? All three of them turned to see a very sleepy Itachi enter the room, clearly having been woken up from his nap judging by his weasel-patterned pajamas. This didn't stop Sasuke from almost gaping like a fish at how tiny his brother looked, like an actual child. Was Itachi ever really just a child at any point in his life? Sasuke hadn't been convinced until he saw it for himself, and even now it was jarring. Why are you fighting? Itachi, sweetie, we're not fighting, Mikoto tried to reassure him. It's just, we're not quite agreeing about, who are you? Itachi asked as soon as he noticed the other person in the room, ignoring his mother thanks to the curiosity that only a child could muster. I'm Sasuke, said Uchiha replied, not sure what else he could say. He wasn't prepared for this. On a theoretical level he knew that his brother was alive, and very very young since this was the past, but having to actually deal with it, that was a completely different matter. I'm Itachi, the child replied immediately, showing that Mikoto had raised a polite boy. Yes, I know. Are you an Uchiha, too? Yes, I am, Sasuke nodded, nervously getting a step closer. I've never seen you before, Itachi said, confused. That was right, even at such a young age Itachi would at least know the faces of those in his clan, if not their names. People made a point to interact with their heir, after all. I was away. Sasuke was now very close to Itachi, kneeling so he could look him in the eye without towering over the toddler. He was also very aware of how Fugaku was watching him like a hawk, but he didn't bother to react to it. Away? Were you on a mission? The little Uchiha asked, tilting his head. Something like that, he lied. If Itachi came up with his own explanations, all the easier for him. Are you my cousin? Like Shishui? Itachi asked, looking a little excited at the prospect of having someone else to play with, even if he was a lot older. Sorry, Itachi, Sasuke sighed. I can't tell you that. Itachi frowned adorably. Why not? Sasuke smiled, then wordlessly reached out with 2 fingers, completely ignoring the threatening way Fugaku tensed and poked Itachi in the center of the forehead. Maybe I'll tell you another time. Itachi pouted and pushed the fingers away. It was probably the most adorable pout ever pouted, and Itachi of all people was the one doing it. Sasuke couldn't help it. He laughed, loudly, to everyone's confusion. Naruto and Karen suddenly perked up, all but forgetting about the steaming teacups in front of them as they glanced in confusion towards the window that gave quite a nice view of the village. What's wrong? Minato asked, curious by the strange behavior. Nothing. It's like something incredible is happening, and we're missing it, Naruto tried to explain, not sure how to describe the weird feeling he had. Never mind that. Let's go back to planning your fake identity, Naruto, Kushina said, resuming the previous discussion. What about a third cousin, twice removed? Seriously? Minato asked sarcastically. That is the best you can do. It's not like they can say they know you're lying, Kushina shrugged. How so? The yondaime couldn't help but ask. Very few people know anything about your relatives. Or lack thereof, she explained. He could be my brother, I guess, Minato reasoned. It makes it easier to justify the resemblance between us. Wouldn't that make me my own uncle? Naruto asked, squinting his eyes a little. The idea of having to pretend to be his father's brother sounded weird, somehow. Not unless you stayed around long enough to see your own birth, Karen joked ominously. Although, if he could, or had to, stay that long, better make him a half-brother. One you never knew of before, Kushina reasoned. To explain why his sudden arrival surprised us. Oh, we were surprised, indeed, Minato said, rolling his eyes. That sounds like something out of Ero Sennin's novels, Naruto groaned, trying to dispel his train of thoughts. He would deal with that only after the plan's success. Who? Minato asked, frowning in confusion at the moniker. Jiraiya, he clarified. Even if using his teacher's real name felt a bit weird. And how would you know about what's in Jiraiya's novels, young man? Minato asked, arching an eyebrow. Alarm bells rang loudly in Naruto's brain, and his first instinct was to blame Kakashi. Technically, it was the truth. He had never even seen those books before he had met his first sensei. Before he could even stammer an answer, though, he was silenced by a whack to the head, courtesy of Karen. No talking about the future. His maybe sister by forceful adoption reprimanded him. Oh, now you say it. He scowled, crossing his arms. Why did he have to live to such double standards? Don't bother Naruto, Kushina started in a worryingly judgmental, cold tone. I had almost forgot about it, with everything that has happened, but I saw the box with all the books in your apartment. Box? What do you? He started, only to stop as something clicked in his mind, realizing what box his mother was referring to. Naruto felt his face paling considerably as he remembered where he had put all the books he had inherited from Jiraiya. It's not what it looks like. Oh, I believe it's exactly how it looks like, Kushina murmured. I expected better from my future offspring. That was my private stuff. Naruto exclaimed, trying to go for the last line of defense he could think of since denial had failed. Nothing is private from your mother. His mother replied, and he could swear that as she said so her hair had started to wave around evilly, like if it had a life of his own. Karen rose an eyebrow and looked at Minato, who just shrugged with a sheepish smile. At least Kushina wasn't mad at either of them. They're keepsakes. Naruto blurted out, finally giving in to the angry motherly pressure that was assaulting him, something that he had no defenses for. Strangely enough, it seemed to work, since Kushina's hair fell down, a dumbstruck expression setting on her face. You mean those were from when you were younger? You were a pervert as a child? She exclaimed in a horrified tone, before turning towards her soon-to-be husband. Minato, where did we go wrong? No, Mom, you didn't do anything wrong. Naruto tried to explain. True, they didn't have the time to prove their skills as parents, but he just knew they would have been awesome at it. You see, I'm a bad mother. She wailed, hiding her face in her hands, and, was she going to cry? Karen, Dad, help me please. He pleaded. The last thing he wanted was to see his mom crying because of a stupid misunderstanding. Sorry, brother, Karen said sarcastically. It's your porn stash. You're on your own. Naruto groaned indignantly. Why did everybody think it was a porn stash? He turned towards his father, trying to find some support in the older blonde, thinking that he would understand. He had been a student of Jiraiya as well, after all. Minato, though, was looking at him with a strange, calculating expression as he tried to comfort his fiancée. Dad? Please can you? Something happened to Sensei. Minato asked, almost whispering. The question, albeit it was more like a statement, calmed Kushina instantly, who looked at him with a concerned expression. Naruto felt a shiver run down his spine instead. Dad, Naruto tried to think about something, anything that he could say. Sadly, or maybe luckily, he was stopped by a sudden knocking at the small apartment's door, which caught everyone's attention. With a last glance towards him, his father went to open the door, revealing a shinobi in the process of knocking again. Apologies, Hokage-sama, but something urgent has come up. We tried to find you earlier but, he quickly said after composing himself, before trailing off as he noticed the scene around the table. Are those some of the prisoners? Yes they are, Minato admitted, matter-of-factly. We're interrogating them. The shinobi almost arched an eyebrow at that, especially when Naruto and Karen took a sip from their teacups in an attempt to ignore the sudden attention. But he didn't. He was speaking to the yondaime, after all. Of course, Hokage-sama. What happened? Minato asked, moving in such a way that the ninja couldn't look much at the two time travelers. Is it some emergency? I'm afraid that I can't say in front of the prisoners, sir, the man said in an apologetic tone. Of course. Thanks for telling me, you're dismissed, Minato sighed loudly, closing the door as the shinobi was still bowing at him. He turned towards the other inhabitants of the room, he actually looked embarrassed. I'm sorry. This can't be helped. Kushina just rolled her eyes at that. Just come back for dinner, would you? We're having our first meal as a family, you know. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Minato smiled, glancing one more time towards Naruto before disappearing in a yellow flash. I wonder what was that all about? Karen asked with a frown. Oh, it's probably nothing. I swear, sometimes it's like the village can't even go a day without the Hokage to make every decision for them. Kushina dismissed with a wave of her hand. Don't worry about it. That Chunin didn't tell Dad where he was supposed to go, Naruto noticed after a few seconds of awkward silence. MMH? Masahiro mumbled, slightly perking up from the spot he had chosen for his nap. I said that it's your turn to watch the street, Masahiro Nii, his sister, Ayumi, repeated. I heard that, the Uchiha said, as he got up. But, look, I don't care if you're the clan's best censor and you can watch the perimeter of a building just by sitting in the middle of the roof. Ayumi growled. No. You don't get it, Masahiro interrupted her, as he tilted his head a moment, a look of confusion on his face. Something strange is happening. Masahiro Nii, in the last few days an entire apartment complex teleported itself into the village. Half of the clan was hospitalized and were treating the people who did it as honorable guests, the girl deadpanned. We're a bit beyond strange. Pervy Shrimp, for just a moment, please shut up, he said as he looked towards the village, his tone serious even with the moniker he had coined for his sister. What? You're so rude, Masahiro Nii. Ayumi exclaimed in affront. I'm telling Mom, and then you'll. Ayumi, seriously. He stopped her immediately. I wasn't kidding when I said I felt something strange. Then what are you feeling? Ayumi demanded, remarkably unimpressed. I think that it's better if I just go to the Hokage instead, he said, reasoning that it was better to report to the authorities instead of explaining what he had felt to his bratty sister. Wah, hey. You can't tease me like this and then not explain. Also, if you tell Mom, I tell her about your porn stash, remember. No fair, Masahiro Nii. She yelled, but Masahiro was already gone before she'd finished. There will be a reckoning. The small waiting room was mostly plain. Even the pictures on the walls and the flower pot didn't help to improve that feeling. Even if it was packed with people, but as the hours had passed there hadn't been much conversation. Gaara wasn't exactly what you could call a social person. Matsuri seemed to be too scared of the idea of breaking ice with people outside of her village. Kankuro had tried to talk to Lee a little, but there was a limit to how much youth a person could endure. Sai's attempts at talking with people that didn't know him well enough were just terrible. Jugo was standing against the wall like a silent pillar made of muscle. Suigetsu was bitter about having been put on the sidelines, as he called it. And Temari. So bored, she exclaimed, secretly hoping that someone had found a topic to talk about. Read a magazine, Gaara told her without even blinking. They're old magazines, she said, looking at the small coffee table full of the items in question as if they had personally offended her. From the past. We are in the past, Temari, the Kazekage replied. Say. Kankuro said, turning towards the shinobi that weren't from Suna. I get that we were put here because we already have a cover as diplomatic liaisons, but what about you guys? None of us have a family inside the village to talk with, Jugo explained, surprisingly. What? The puppet user asked in confusion, looking at Sai and Lee. Not even. Lee slowly shook his head, before the question was even properly asked. The closest thing I ever had to a family is Gai-sensei, and he's in the hospital right now. I tried to ask, but I can't visit him. I don't know where I was born, Sai said in his usual monotone voice. So, what do you figure your cover story will be? Kankuro asked, genuinely curious. No idea, Lee admitted. We could hide, Sai suggested. That doesn't seem like a good. Shinobi are excellent at stealth, the pale boy pointed out. It's logical that we should be able to remain hidden for the duration of the mission. What about you two? Temari asked, looking at the other two ninja in the waiting room. I'll just do whatever Sasuke believes is for the best, Jugo calmly explained. As for Suigetsu, I can speak for myself, man. The swordsman protested. I guess we could put him in a bottle for the remainder of our stay. Ha ha ha, Suigetsu growled, his laugh dripping with sarcasm. Nice joke, Jugo. What joke? The giant asked, perfectly serious. I wonder what the others are doing right now, Lee sighed, ignoring Suigetsu's outraged yell. Probably spending time with their younger parents, Sai reasoned. I wonder what it's like to see people who should be dead. You do realize that Danzo is still alive in this time, right? Lee asked, looking at his comrade with a concerned expression. Sai didn't say anything. He didn't even flinch, actually. The only visible reaction he had was biting his lips. The room fell silent once again, this time full of embarrassment from Lee's part, awkwardness from most of the other shinobi. But after a few moments the room felt like if it was getting colder, and waves of killing intent could be felt, coming from the artist. Oh, look at these pictures. Temari exclaimed to Matsuri, grabbing a magazine and opening it at a random page in a desperate attempt to get on a lighter topic. I can't believe people used to dress like this, 20 years ago. You mean, now, Gaara corrected her. Shut up, Gaara. You were just watching the seal, and it activated on its own. Minato slowly asked, trying to remind himself that he had to remain professional about this. After all, just because he had forgotten to ask where he was supposed to go for this emergency, it wasn't a big deal. He had used the Hiration to check various locations until he'd found where he was supposed to be. Frustrating, yes, but he couldn't let it temper his judgment. Yes, Hokage-sama, Canary said, who was in the middle of prostrating in front of him, face down on the floor. You didn't touch anything? The yondaime questioned. Didn't use your chakra at all? I swear, Hokage-sama. I really didn't do anything. Canary cried. And yet, even by not doing anything, I failed my mission. I'm aware that I'm a disgrace. Canary, you're not a disgrace. It's not your fault, and please get up off the floor, there's no need for that. Yes, Hokage-sama, Canary said, standing. His pose remained very slouched though, and quite depressing to watch. So, the seal activated, he continued. But nothing happened. No, Hokage-sama, the sad Anbu confirmed. No more people appeared inside the building? Minato asked, turning to the rest of the people inside the room. No, Hokage-sama, another Anbu, Hare, replied. Or, outside the building? Not that we know of, Hokage-sama, Hare said, shaking his head. Great. And we weren't there to see it. It may have shed some light on how the seal works exactly, Minato muttered under his breath. Like he didn't enough problems already, with the time travelers and everything else. Then he was basically told that his teacher, an unofficial father figure, was dead in the future, which he had always known could happen someday. They were shinobi after all, their average lifespan peaking around their late 30s and early 40s in exceptional cases. And even great shinobi rarely made it to retirement age, but knowing that it was going to happen, well, that was a completely different feeling. You've had a few rough days, Canary. Why don't you take a break? I'll talk to the commander and, I understand sir. I'm clearly not fit to be an ANBU. Wah, no, I'm just giving you a few days of. I'll go guard the village gate, in shame. Canary said, prostrating again, possibly even more than before. Hopefully I'll not fail at that too. Oh, for heaven's sake. Get up. Minato snapped, getting mildly annoyed. I accept your judgment, Hokage-sama. I never should have asked to become part of Anbu, and, thankfully, Canary was interrupted as a Chunin appeared in the doorway. Hokage-sama. Masahiro Uchiha says he has something urgent to discuss with you. He seems a bit shaken. Shaken? Minato asked, frowning at the absurdity of an Uchiha actually showing their emotions for others to see. As shaken as an Uchiha can be, the Chunin said with a shrug. Send him in immediately, then, Minato ordered, relieved that someone was saving him from Canary's gloom. Something is strange here, the man said, coming to a sudden stop. What do you mean? His partner grunted, stopping right beside him but remaining vigilant. The village looks different, he said, his sharp gaze roving over streets full of people, at which his taller companion barked out a laugh. You've been away for a long time, the other man reasoned. It shouldn't be a surprise if the place looks different. Instead of answering, he gazed around the village once more. The more he looked, the more he was starting to suspect that a genjutsu was in place. There was no other explanation for why what he was seeing would look like how he remembered the village from the time of his childhood. Albeit he could attribute that to a sense of nostalgia. Then his eyes fell on a distant district, visible even from where he stood. A place that should have been abandoned long ago. He replied, starting to walk again. /N, yep. I'm still alive. I would have liked to update this story earlier but I was distracted. Let's go with that. I realize that this chapter is not as long as the previous ones, but I hope that you enjoyed it anyway. Oh, make time, and a crossover with my crossover story, too. Naruto and Karen suddenly perked up, all but forgetting about the steaming teacups in front of them as they glanced in confusion towards the window that gave quite a nice view of the village. What's wrong? Minato asked, curious by the strange behavior. Nothing. It's like something incredible is happening, and we're missing it, Naruto tried to explain, not sure how to describe the weird feeling he had. Never mind that. Let's go back to planning your fake identity, Naruto, Kushina said, resuming the previous discussion. What about a third cousin, twice removed? Seriously? Minato asked sarcastically. That is the best you can do. It's not like they can say they know you're lying, Kushina shrugged. How so? The yondaime couldn't help but ask. Very few people know anything about your relatives. Or lack thereof, she explained. He could be my brother, I guess, Minato reasoned. It makes it easier to justify the resemblance between us. Wouldn't that make me my own uncle? Naruto asked, squinting his eyes a little. The idea of having to pretend to be his uncle sounded weird, somehow. Especially because he knew him very well, and he wasn't sure about the idea of growing a beard like him. He should have asked Sakura about it. While Naruto was contemplating about a possible future revolving around more facial hair, something like half the world away a lonely figure was walking towards the top of what was believed to be the highest mountain in the world. Stupid mountain, the man grumbled, as he kept moving. His steps were slowed down by the snow, and the cold, but his body was thankfully resilient to it. That didn't mean that he liked freezing his ass off, though. Stupid snow. Stupid 7,000 steps. Stupid ice trolls. Stupid never-ending storm to reach the peak. Stupid graybeards. Stupid High Hrothgar. Stupid Skyrim. Stupid Tamriel. Stupid Nern. That's it for part 6. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.